let's talk about what materials we're going to need for our drawing class, starting with our drawing board. This drawing board is, I believe, 26 by 24 inches, and it's meant to hold an 18 by 24 drawing pad that looks like this. A few things to keep in mind when buying a drawing board. Try to buy a drawing board with these kind of T-shaped clips. There's a few other kinds on the market that perhaps are a little bit more complicated and whose mechanisms don't work quite as well. For instance, they don't open up quite far enough, or they don't hold the board, they don't hold the drawing pad quite as firmly. This is the best kind. And if you can find an older model, they tend to be better and sturdier. Anything before, let's say, I would say like the year 2000. So if your grandfather took a drawing class at some point, steal his drawing board, or you can find old used drawing boards on eBay. So this is a drawing board which will hold an 18 by 24 drawing pad. A few things to keep in mind when buying paper. First of all, paper comes in different thicknesses, obviously. The thickness in paper is measured in what's called the LB scale. Drawing paper tends to run between 40 to about 80 LB. Printing paper, Xerox paper, tends to be maybe 20 or 30. Drawing paper will run between 40 and 80. This is 50, so this is really good for sketching. Paper that is 70 or 80 LB is good for longer drawings, for final projects. But any paper between, I would say, 40 and 80 LB will be perfectly fine. Once you start going past 80 to 90, 100, 140 sometimes, it starts turning into cardstock, which is very, very good, but really unnecessary for most of what we're doing. So that's paper weight. Then you also want to get paper that is acid-free. The paper will either say acid-free or pH neutral on it, which means that the paper has been made with a more expensive, a better manufacturing process which eliminates all the acid from the paper fibers. Most of the art papers that you buy will be either acid-free or pH neutral. The only kind that will not is newsprint. And because newsprint is made with a cheaper, less expensive manufacturing process, the acid in the paper will eventually over time yellow the paper and cause it to crumble. So make sure your paper is acid-free. And again, just about every drawing paper that you buy at the art supply store will be, other than newsprint. The last thing to keep in mind is that you want to buy a drawing pad with wire binding like this. There are some drawing pads that are glue bound, and that glue will degrade and start to crumble over time, and you'll be left with a bunch of loose sheets as opposed to a drawing pad. The last thing to keep in mind is that paper this size gets very heavy very quickly. So a pad of 30 sheets to 50 sheets will be just fine. The clips will be able to hold them like this. If you get a pad with 100 sheets, sometimes the clips just won't open up far enough to hold a big pad like that. And the pad will be so heavy that if you hold it horizontally, the drawing pad's going to start falling off. Even with a light pad like this, I recommend that you buy some extra clips so that if you hold the board sideways, you can add an additional clip for stability. Now, these drawing boards quite often come with a rubber band that you can stretch this way to support the board, but you'll find that you'll need that little bit of extra paper. So I think the clips actually work better for that purpose. What else can I tell you? Okay, so most drawing paper is either medium or fine tooth. Please don't get rough tooth paper. That's more for really fast kind of gestural drawing that we're mostly not going to be doing in this class. Okay. Most of the class we're going to be using this kind of paper. Part of the class we're going to be using something called toned paper. Toned paper looks like this. Here's the brand I want you guys to buy. It's made by Canson. And you want to get a neutral gray paper. In Canson, that's going to be either steel gray or felt gray. About the same value. Steel gray is a little bit more of a bluish gray. Felt gray is a little bit more like a brownish gray. These are relatively large sheets, 19.5 by 25.5 inches, 50 centimeters by 65 centimeters for those people on the metric system. You're probably going to need about 4 sheets of this toned gray paper. For your drawing pencils, you're going to have a range of options. You can use charcoal if you want. That's going to work really well. This is one of my favorite brands of charcoal. It's made by Faber-Castell. It's their Pitt charcoal. And look, there are lots of charcoal brands on the market that are very good. Cretacolor, Kohinoor, Prismacolor makes a very good charcoal pencil. The only one you probably shouldn't get is the Generals brand charcoal pencils. These are just really, really bad. So if you already bought pencils and they're Generals and you feel like using them, fine. I feel sorry for you, but fine. You can continue using them. They're just really gritty. They're a little bit hard to sharpen. They've got a bunch of glue on the side of the ferrules. So I would generally avoid the Generals brand pencil. You can also use what are called carbon pencils. I tend to prefer carbon pencils over charcoal simply because they stay a little bit sharper, they tend to be a little bit harder, and the material goes a little bit darker than a charcoal pencil, and it doesn't smear quite as much. So this is Conte brand, the Pierre Noir. It's basically a carbon pencil. It's really similar to the working properties of charcoal. It's just a little bit more dense and a little bit darker. Now all these pencils come in a range of hardnesses. Sometimes the hardness is measured in the B scale, 2B, 4B, 6B. So that's how this one's measured. Your charcoal pencils will usually be measured in medium or hard, medium, soft, extra soft. So just make sure you have a range of these pencils. This is a really good carbon pencil. I also really, really like these Wolf's Carbon. It's a little bit hard to see the label here. So we can focus in here. You can't really see, it's reflecting. Okay, so this is Wolf's Carbon. It also comes in a range of hardnesses. It doesn't go quite as dark as the Pierre Noir, but these are really good pencils. They stay really sharp. So get a range of hardnesses. Look, I tend to use softer pencils overall, so when you see the demos, chances are I'm probably using a Wolf's Carbon 6B or a Conte Pierre Noir 3B, which is the softest one that they have. But that's really going to be up to you. Look, there's lots of brands of pencils on the market. Charcoal, carbon pencils. You just want to make sure that your pencil meets two requirements. It's black and it erases. So that's going to eliminate China markers. That's going to eliminate any kind of wax-based color pencil, Prismacolor. Not that those materials are bad, but look, I'm going to want you guys to do lots and lots of correcting. So a non-correctable China marker is perhaps a more advanced material for when you guys are more confident. For right now, we're going to be building up our drawings little by little, making lots of changes, corrections. You want something that's erasable. So that's for your black pencils, either charcoal or carbon will be fine. You also want to get a white chalk pencil. Because we're working on tone paper, you're going to want to have white to build up your values towards the highlights. This is a Conte, and this one is the Carbothello. This one's a little bit denser, this one's a little bit chalkier. You just want to make sure that your white chalk pencils are actually chalk, not wax-based. Because we're going to be mixing black and white materials together, you want them to blend evenly into each other. If one of the materials is waxy and the other one's chalky, they're going to resist each other and not going to blend together as much. Now, besides the white chalk, I also want all of you to buy a red chalk pencil. Make sure it's this kind of brick red color. Usually it's called either red chalk or sanguine. Conte makes an excellent sanguine red chalk pencil. So this is the brand I recommend for that. It only comes in a single grade of hardness. We're going to be using it for a variety of applications. So it's going to be really useful to separate out the muscles from the bones when we start doing anatomy. But it's also a beautiful drawing material on its own and works really well when mixed with the white and black to create almost like a flesh tint effect when mixed together. So get yourself a red chalk pencil like this. A regular bright red pencil will not work. Make sure it's brick red, this kind of soft, like a rust color. All right, so besides your black pencils, you're also going to want to get a stick of compressed charcoal. Make sure it's extra soft. So embarrassingly, this is actually a Generals and it's not extra soft. You can see it says 2B right here. This is the only thing I have in my studio right now. It should be 6B, which is the extra soft, and it probably shouldn't be Generals. It should be either Cretacolor or I don't know, some other brand. Faber-Castell makes really good compressed charcoal. Don't get confused. Do not buy vine or willow charcoal, which is not compressed charcoal. So make sure that you're buying things that are either perfectly cylindrical or kind of rectangular. Basically, the difference is that the willow and vine charcoal are just regular charcoal. They're They look organic. They're sticks. They've been put in a kiln. Compressed charcoal is a different material. It's all that charcoal put in some kind of press with the addition of binders, waxes, oils to make the material a lot more dense. So for the technique we're going to be using it for, you're going to want to get, once again, extra soft. So that's going to be 6B compressed charcoal. You'll find that these little twisty sharpeners do a very poor job sharpening your really soft charcoal and carbon pencils. As an example, let's try sharpening this. Most often what happens is that these sharpeners are just too dull and just grind up your drawing material, so there's no way to actually sharpen the pencil effectively. So the way we're going to sharpen our pencils is with an X-Acto knife. So all of you need to buy an X-Acto knife that looks like this, and a bunch of extra number 11 blades. I recommend getting a package of 100 because the blades need to stay really sharp in order for the knife to sharpen effectively. So we're going to sharpen our pencils with an X-Acto knife. There'll be a demo on that later once you get all your supplies. But you'll find that with practice that this knife does a much better job in sharpening the pencils. Plus, this has additional benefit in that it allows us to sharpen our pencils really long, like this. Again, demo to come. I'll show you guys how to do this. But a pencil with a long tip gives you a lot more versatility in the way you hold it. So now, not only can I hold it using my writer's grip, I can also hold it sideways using what's called the thumb and forefinger grip. So get yourself an X-Acto knife, get a bunch of extra blades. I recommend a package of 100. And for the purpose of our class, throw out your little twisty sharpeners. They're going to be more or less useless. Now, you can also use other sharpening tools. You can use a box cutter. That works perfectly fine. If you're already comfortable using a box cutter to sharpen, I'm perfectly fine with that. But I think you'll find that you have a little bit more control over the X-Acto knife than you would a big clunky box cutter. Okay, so get an X-Acto knife, number 11 blades. You're going to need two kinds of erasers for this class. You're going to need a hard eraser and something called a kneaded eraser. So a hard eraser is an eraser you might be familiar with. These are both nylon erasers. This one's black, this one's white. It's the same material. This one I believe is made by Mars Staedtler. This is, I think, also made by Staedtler. They work exactly the same. So these are white nylon erasers or a black nylon eraser, a hard eraser like this. And then you're also going to need something called a kneaded eraser. So these come in little gray squares, and as the name suggests, they're designed to be kneaded like dough. So anytime my eraser gets dirty, I can knead it around a little bit and clean it up. These erasers are actually used in very different ways. Your hard eraser is used for erasing proper. So anytime I really hate my drawing and I want it to go away, I'm going to use my hard eraser to eliminate my drawing. The kneaded eraser is more of a value adjuster. So if I've introduced shading that goes a little bit too dark, or there's some kind of splotch somewhere that I want to correct, I can use my kneaded eraser to lighten the value to make little tiny adjustments. So this is your I hate my drawing eraser, I want it to go away. This is the I sort of hate my drawing, I just want to lighten it a little bit, touch it up. You should also, this is recommended, not required, get a little eraser holder like this for little delicate jobs. So this one I think is made by Blix, if I'm not mistaken, and then both of these are made by Tombow. This one's rectangular, this one's round. These are really good to have for little detail operations. So sometimes I need to erase out a little wedge somewhere or highlight on a nose. I'm going to use one of these little eraser holders to do that. There are other eraser holders on the market. These three are the best ones. I usually carry these two around with me at all times. If you don't have these, you're going to have to cut little pieces out of your hard eraser in order to go into sharp corners. So sometimes I'll have a little piece of erasers lying around that are wedge shaped so I can work into corners if I don't have my eraser holders to work with. So those are the different kinds of erasers you should probably get. These you definitely get. Hard eraser, kneaded eraser, eraser holders, recommended strongly, but not required. We're going to be using two materials for blending and smoothing our drawings. The first thing is called a chamois cloth. Now, it doesn't look this color out of the bag. It's actually a tanned kind of beige material. It's a really soft animal skin, I'm assuming like a cow skin. It's called a chamois cloth. And then, for finer blending, you want to get a few of these blending stumps. You can get a package of different sizes for a few dollars. This is basically tightly wound newsprint. If you don't have this, you can take some paper towels and roll them up really tightly and use them, but I find that these tips give you a little bit more control for detailed work. So get yourself a chamois cloth and at least 3 or 4 different blending stumps. You're going to want to buy a box to carry all your supplies. This is a good one. This has lots of space for all the stuff that you bought. The only problem is that when it comes to your charcoal and your graphite pencils, this box will have a tendency to shake them around and potentially damage them. So you can get a box like this, but particularly for your graphite and charcoal pencils, I recommend you keep them in a slightly more secure place, a tin box that looks like this. So this one, I've replaced the old foam with a paper towel. Let's see about this one. Okay, so you can see this one has the original foam in it. It just does a better job protecting your pencils. You can also get a case that looks like this. This one's really, really good. It's soft but stiff enough to protect your pencils. I believe this was originally for a eye pencil, a case for an eye pencil. So this is really good. For a larger capacity, having a case like this is really useful. So this one, I don't really remember the brand at the moment, but the fact that it's got individual slots for your pencils to keep them safe and lots of capacity is really good. I'll find the brand and list it at the back, at the bottom of the video. So get yourself a case. Make sure your pencils are not shaking around and getting damaged in it when you're carrying it. Not that you're going to be doing lots of carrying since this class is online, but in case you do, you want to make sure that you keep your pencils safe. Now let's talk about some supplies that I recommend but don't require. Some of you may have seen something that looks like this. This is a sanding block. It's used to hone the tip of your pencil. So sometimes you want a sharper tip. You can use the sanding block to re-hone, to re-flatten your pencil. The problem with these is that you tend to go through these really, really quickly, and the sandpaper on these blocks is very rough and will eat through your pencil really fast. So instead of these sanding blocks, I recommend you get a metal file from the hardware store. So this one I had for years and years and years. It's a metal file, not a wood file. It's got fine grain on it, and it is much more effective at honing your pencils. So you can get one at the hardware store and have it forever. So this is my studio model. This is what I keep at home. And then you can also buy a little small one for travel. These are really, really effective. It'll keep you from constantly sharpening your pencils with an X-Acto knife. So get yourself a metal file. Again, recommendation, not a requirement. And then I also really strongly recommend getting a pencil extender. A pencil extender works like this. When your pencil gets too short to hold comfortably, you can use a pencil extender to add length to your pencil and give your pencil quite a bit more life. So now I can hold the pencil comfortably in my hand this way, and this way, the two different grips for holding your pencil. This one is probably about $3. There's a number of different brands, including Generals, that make them. There's a number of extenders that are kind of fancy. This one's made by Faber-Castell. And this one has the advantage of having a twisty pencil sharpener in the back. Now, we talked about twisty pencil sharpeners already, but look, if you're traveling or you're in a place where you can't use an X-Acto knife, these twisty sharpeners are the next best thing. And Faber-Castell has one made out of solid silver, which I believe is several $100s. This one's plastic and was probably about 10, if I'm not mistaken. So you can get this one. This pencil extender is really nice. It's made by Staedtler. It was about $13. And not only does it extend the pencil, but it has a hardness indicator, which is a little bit stuck here, so you can indicate what hardness of pencil you have. It also has a retractable eraser in the back, which is really useful. So this is really good for travel. If you're out sketching, you can sharpen your pencil, put it in the other way to store it, And then when you want to take it out, you can make it as long as you want. So a few different pencil extenders, materials that are recommended but not required. There are no required texts for the class. However, these are two books that I really strongly recommend. Since we're going to be studying artistic anatomy in this class, I recommend a really good artistic anatomy book. And this is one of the best ones, one of the oldest ones on the market, published by Dr. Paul Richet, I think probably in the 1870s, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a book that's used by many generations of artists. What makes it so good? Well, the plates are really, really clear. It goes over the bones, it goes over the muscles, everything's really crisp, well labeled, very, very clear. The other advantage is that this book also has veins, also shows what you're seeing on the surface, right? So surface landmarks, but it also has these. So what happens to the anatomy when the shoulders are pulled back or pulled forward, right? It has plates explaining what's going on here when the arm is lifted. It has all kinds of stuff. You can see this copy is falling apart. That's the one bad thing about this book. Though this book is probably about 20 years old at this point, it's falling apart a little bit. So it has lots and lots of very useful plates. Now, I will be providing some of these plates for you. I'll be uploading these plates as we're studying various body parts. Here's a really useful number of pages here. So it's showing rotations of the arm going from supination, palm up, to pronation, and what happens to the various muscle groups under those conditions. I will be uploading some of these plates, but not these. I can't upload everything. But I will have some of these plates available. So, Artistic Anatomy by Dr. Paul Richet, I'll have it listed in the materials list for you. There are other anatomy books on the market. They're all really good. I can make a number of other recommendations, but if I was going to buy one anatomy book, I would buy this one. And this book has been around a very long time, so there's plenty of used copies on eBay. What can I say? I recommend finding a hardcover. It's going to last longer. I find these softcover books, the glue over time falls apart. Though again, I've had this for a lot of years, and this has withstood a lot of use. So, Artistic Anatomy by Dr. Paul Richet. The other book that I really strongly recommend is called Anatomy Lessons from the Great Masters by Dr. Beverly Hale. So another book that I've had for a very long time. It's fallen apart. It's a compilation of anatomy lectures by America's preeminent teacher of artistic anatomy, Robert Beverly Hale, who taught at Art Center, Pennsylvania Academy, a number of different places. His lectures are actually available on YouTube if you want to take a look at them. What makes this book so good? Well, his lectures are really brilliant. I was never able to attend his lectures, but they were written down, and this book has a breakdown of the body parts going from the legs, the torso. So here he's talking about the anatomical structures of the foot. So basically it has anatomy broken down by body part, which is the way we're going to be learning anatomy. So we'll have a week on legs, a week on the torso, front and back. So during that period, during leg week, you can consult this book, and it's going to have really detailed information on it. Now, the big advantage of this book is that it has absolutely excellent examples of old master drawings to illustrate the anatomical lessons. So here we have a drawing by Michelangelo, and here we have a breakdown of what's happening anatomically. The notes are pretty detailed. They're fairly advanced. You might want to, as you're reading the text, have your artistic anatomy next to you for really deep study. So if you want to see how the old masters tackled the biceps brachii, this book is absolutely excellent for it. Now, the big advantage of this book, besides the excellent notes, excellent lectures, besides the excellent examples of anatomically accurate drawing, is that this book also at the back has some of the plates from Richet. Not all of them, but enough to get you by. So it doesn't have the rotations, but it has most of the plates. So that makes this book really useful. This book requires work. The lectures are pretty dry. They're detailed. You really have to go through. But this book is definitely worth the purchase. Now, we're going to be copying Old Master drawings as part of your homework. So basically every week the homework assignment is going to be copy 2 Old Master drawings and do certain things with them. So for instance, break them down to simple shapes, or focus on line quality, focus on shading, or use such and such technique. So you are going to be searching for Old Master drawings to copy every single week. This book has them. So if you want to copy a back, you can look in the back section, and it has multiple examples of torsos, backs. Here's an excellent back by Michelangelo. This will be really difficult to copy, by the way. Michelangelo always is. So you're not constantly searching on the computer, looking for Old Master drawings. This book contains all the Old Master drawings you need to work from. And plus, the drawings here are curated for the anatomical accuracy. So you know that the drawing that you choose to copy from is going to be accurate. It's not going to have any kind of weird anatomical mistakes because it was hand-selected by a master of artistic anatomy to be included in this book. If you don't buy this book, then you're going to have to search for Old Master drawings online, and I will be giving you lists of artists to look for. So you can very easily find databases online on Pinterest of Old Master drawings. That shouldn't be a problem. Or you can go to the library, if the libraries are open, or go on Amazon and buy books of Old Master drawings. So this book this is Pierre-Paul Proudhon, who's an excellent figurative draftsman. So you're going to be searching for Old Master drawings to work from. This is Jacob Degain. So I have tons and tons of books on figure drawing by the masters. I often copy. Look, copying drawings is an absolutely excellent way of learning how to draw, almost learning by osmosis. So I recommend either getting the Anatomy Lessons of the Great Masters or going online, searching for Old Master drawings. We'll see. I might upload links for various Old Master drawings, so you know, or links to databases for Old Master drawings. But once again, here are the 2 books that I recommend: Artistic Anatomy by Dr. Paul Richet, Anatomy Lessons of the Great Masters from the Great Masters by Dr. Beverly Hale.